Hi, welcome. Today we'll be going ahead with the installation of the Ts101 Advanced and the Ts101 Basic GPS tracking devices. Before we go ahead with the installation procedures, please note the tools and equipments required for the installation. The tools you would require are a screwdriver set, either Phillips head or the standard screwdriver, wire stripper, cutter, a digital multimeter, insulation tape, spanner set, screws and nuts, and some cable ties. The first step is to identify the location where power supply is continuously available straight from the battery for connecting the device. In case of trucks and buses, the power supply has to be drawn before the cutoff switch, that is directly from the battery, in order to give uninterrupted supply to the device. Whereas in LCVs, that is cars, the power has to be tapped either from the vehicle battery or near the ignition switch. In this case, the ignition switch has been identified near the steering column. Hence, remove the panels and go ahead with unboxing the device. As it can be seen from the video, the box contains one Ts101 Advanced GPS tracking device, the warranty card, the field wiring harness, the side panels, and some cable ties for installation. Going ahead with the installation, identify the red, black, and the green wires at the open end of the field wiring harness. Now, connect the electrical lug to the black wire for proper connection. It is preferred that the electrical lug be crimped and insulated properly with the black wire. Now, the electrical lug has to be connected to the chassis ground. It can either be found near the ignition switch or else anywhere on the body of the vehicle. In order to identify the primary power connection, disconnect the connector at the other end of the ignition switch and check each wire for 12-volt power with a digital multimeter. Once the main power cable at the vehicle end has been identified, slightly sleeve the cable and connect the red wire from the field wiring harness cable to the power cable. Properly insulate the connection using insulation tape. As you know, the ignition switch has three positions from steering lock to the engine start position. 1. The accessories on, the ignition on, and the engine crank. In order to find the ignition connection, keep the key turned to ignition on and check the voltage on each wire, keeping aside the main power wire. Once the 12-volt is seen, switch off the ignition to identify whether the selected wire is the ignition wire. Once the ignition is switched off, the voltage jumps back to 0. Once confirmed, connect the green wire from the field wiring harness to this identified ignition cable and properly insulate using the insulation tape. Once the wiring is completed, using an Allen key, open the back panel of the device to insert the SIM card. Now, open the back panel and properly insert the SIM card according to the notation given on the PCB. Once the SIM card has been properly positioned and inserted into the SIM slot, check the gasket for proper seating on the walls and close the back panel and screw it tightly. After the wiring and other procedures are completed, connect the field wiring harness to the device. This will turn on the device. Finally, turn on the battery switch by sliding the battery on-off switch away from the USB. It is mandatory to turn on the battery switch to charge the secondary battery. Finally, disconnect the main power to check whether the secondary battery is enabled. After disconnecting, blinking of the device LEDs confirms proper functioning of the secondary battery. Lastly, fasten the side panel with screws after appropriately placing the rubber gasket within the slot. This makes the Ts101 Advanced casing IP67 compliant.